Matt Railla, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Matt, you had a stint as a business broker, and during that time, you had a listing, a popular listing, but one that just wouldn't sell until you bought it yourself. We're going to hear that story today, but start us off with some background first, please, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a brief history on my childhood. I grew up with entrepreneurial parents. My mom had a corporate job, but she also opened up her own hot sauce store in Los Angeles, had that for about 5 years with a partner. So that was cool seeing that as a kid, having my mom has her own hot sauce store. That was unique and fun.
Matt, what's a hot sauce store?
So
they just
she
sold
basically,
sriracha?
Yeah, well, yeah. It was a retail store, and she sold hot sauces from all over the world. Basically, the whole store is just lined with hundreds of different kinds of hot sauces. And
how funky! So is this like that's obviously an entrepreneurial venture in the sense that she had it was an inspired idea. She thought there should be a store devoted just to this, because I've never heard of such a concept.
Yeah, it's it was fun. And then she had like spicy ice cream and jalapeno infused pretzels, and it was really cool. I mean, a lot of celebrities went in there because it was, they were great for like gift baskets and corporate gifts, things like that.
Oh, how cool. What was the place called?
It was called Fire Alley.
Fire Alley. Perfect. And was it, you said it survived for 5 years. Was it, how lucrative was it or not?
I don't think it was very lucrative from that standpoint. And the only reason they closed it down was because her partner got pregnant and didn't want to do it anymore. And my mom, there's 3 of us. She was raising 3 kids. She was a single mom. So she didn't really have time to continue it on her own. Okay. But I think she just had a lot of fun with it. She just has that, she had that spirit, entrepreneurial spirit.
That spice, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. The spice. And then my dad has also been an entrepreneur for as long as I can remember. He has his own construction business. And then he's dabbled into a few different other businesses. He helped start a indoor rock climbing gym, and he owned that for a while before selling his stake in it. And then he owned a winery, which is where kind of my entrepreneurial journey starts. When I was, I think, 24 or 25, he had this winery, but it was just a label. They were just selling wine up in Northern California. He had another partner that he was working with on it. And around 2013, he decided he wanted to open up a tasting room and grow the business. And so I decided to move up and help him open up the tasting room, help him get started. And I wasn't really thinking I would be a part of it. I was just going up because, I played soccer after college. I played semi-pro and was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do next. So I didn't really have a plan. So my dad just presented me the opportunity. So I went up, and then after about a year, my dad realized that his previous partner, had been embezzling money and, doing some shady things. So that partner left, and then my dad went to me and said, "Hey, do you want to take over and run this winery, this business, this tasting room?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do it. I'll jump in." And for about 6 years, I ran the winery, and that was my life for a long time, was handling the wine production and managing the tasting room, selling the wine. I was selling to restaurants directly. I was working with a wine broker, and towards the end of it, we actually got into Costco, which was a really cool win for us. Even though we didn't make a lot of money, it wasn't a very profitable. It was actually a failing business from the beginning. But that is, as I learned, I had a lot of naivete going into it of just not knowing much about the wine industry. But as I learned after 6 years of being in it, like, most wineries are loss leaders. Like, none of them really generate a lot of profit unless you've been there for 70 years and you own vineyards and, you have a mass production going on.
Well, it's the right alongside restaurants. It's the kind of classic vanity business that rich people will have a winery sort of thing. Doesn't need to make money because they're already rich,
right?
Of course, and makes it a horrible business for the actual entrepreneur who does need to make a profit from their business. And just for those who are not familiar with how it works, including yours truly, I think this is right. Winery and vineyard is the actual owner of the grapes, harvests the grapes and produces the raw materials of the wine. And then a winery is the label, is the one that produces the final branded bottle of wine, and that can be integrated. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of wineries that have their own vineyards, but in a lot of cases, there's this separation there. So you buy grapes or buy juice and then label it and put it out as your own brand, right? And so you guys didn't have your own grapes. You guys were just okay.
Yeah, we purchased the grapes directly from vineyards, and we kind of had a niche. We were specializing in small vineyard Zinfandels. So like we would find, an acre of Zin that a family just planted on their property in Northern California, and we'd buy the grapes from them. So we'd be the only ones sourcing from that vineyard, which made it kind of unique and special, but wasn't a very profitable move. And looking back at it now, it's like I just made every wrong, move you could make in trying to make a successful business in the winery. It was like I chose like a niche varietal that only is, small amount of wine drinkers actually drink on a regular basis. But it was fun.
Zinfandels aren't popular? I mean, that's that's my go-to.
Yeah, no, it's a great wine, but like in the wine world, they kind of, people look down on Zin. They're like, oh, that's just like, the blue collar wine. It's not like
I had no idea.
A cab or a Pinot that's like delicate and, it pairs and it's looking as like high class, high end wine. I think we were like the only winery in the area that did that just like made Zinfandel.
And what town was your tasting room in?
We were in Forestville. So small little town. Yeah, okay. It's in between Sebastopol and Guerneville in Sonoma County.
So Sonoma. I was thinking
Sonoma County.
Okay. Yeah. Love it over there.
Yeah, beautiful. I love living there. It was a great time. Just didn't make any money. It was, and I had like this kind of ignorance of, I'm going to build this winery up and sell it. Mm-hmm. That was my dad and I's kind of long-term vision. We're going to, create this mass following, get this huge wine club membership list, and then sell to someone or to another winery that wants to expand. And we always had that mindset. But I had no idea of how to get there or how to accomplish that goal. Mm-hmm. I was just kind of throwing mud at the wall and just seeing what stuck. And I was actually one of the first wineries in the area to do canned wine. I'm
not familiar. What is that can like?
Like a can, we put wine in a can,
soda
like
can?
Aluminum. Yeah, like aluminum can. Just to see if that would, strike a chord, make us, get us into the spotlight. But it didn't. Oh. Yeah. I mean, it was a great product. People loved it. It was, it worked great for what it was, but we just didn't have the means of getting, working with a distributor. We just were too small. And so,
and really then doubling down on the blue collar vibe of Zinfandel by putting it in a can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we were going after kind of the young, hip crowd. We had artwork on all the labels. My sister did the artwork. So they're very modern looking, very artistic and bright. So pretty much the antithesis of your, classic wine label.
Well, I have to say, Matt, your parents do have a taste for fun or ostensibly fun businesses, from a hot sauce store to an indoor gym to a winery. I mean, this sounds great. Spoiler for the audience: you bought a termite business. So
Right.
you chose a not fun business, but an awesome
Right.
business nonetheless. Anyway, figure I'd call that out. Carry on.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So fast forward to the pandemic, and actually just before the pandemic, around January, we were actually packaging our winery to try and sell it. It got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't live, not making any money.
Mm.
And this is like the writing's on the wall. This is a failing business. I need to get out. And my dad agreed. So we were working with my brother-in-law, who's a business broker, or he had just become one. And so he was helping us, kind of package it and figure out the valuation and, try to, find a buyer for it. And then just as we were about to put it on the market, the pandemic happened. And so obviously everything shut down. The tasting room shut down. And then we had the fires in 2020. So no one, and because of the smoke, no one was able to harvest, or barely anyone was able to harvest that year in 2020 in Sonoma County and Napa. So it was just like, okay, that's it. We can't survive another year in the red. And so we decided to just dissolve it. My dad owned the building that we're in, so he sold the building, and then we sold off the rest of our inventory to Costco, got rid of it for super cheap. And then I moved, my girlfriend was going to law school, so she got into law school in Los Angeles. And so we decided to move back to LA in 2021. And I had to figure out what I wanted to do next. I had no idea.
How old are you at this point in the story?
So I was 32.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty
32,
late in my career.
Starting over.
Yep, starting over from scratch, which was obviously very mentally taxing, draining, overwhelmed, just like all of the negative sides to that, came pouring in. And obviously it took a toll on my relationship. And but my girlfriend was very supportive.
It really was. It was an emotional low point for you. You were having a hard time psychically.
Oh yeah, probably the lowest point I've ever been in.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because before that, I've always known what I was doing every day, what I wanted to do.
Yep.
And now here I am, no idea what I'm doing, and but then I started thinking about it, talking with my girlfriend. She's like, "Oh, why don't you get into real estate?" And then I started thinking about commercial real estate. I was like, that's kind of interesting. I think I can get into that. And I had some friends that were in commercial real estate, started talking to people, making phone calls. And then finally I talked to my brother-in-law, who was in commercial real estate. And then he switched over to being a business broker in North Carolina, and was talking to him. And he gave me the idea. He's like, hey, why don't you be a business broker? You already worked with me on it. You tried to sell your winery. You kind of have a taste for it. Kind of know what to expect. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a really cool idea. I think I could do that. I kind of like that. And so from there, I just jumped straight in. I got my real estate license as soon as I could. And
you got your real estate license, the idea that you're becoming a business broker.
Yeah. So in the state of California, in order to be a business broker, you need a real estate license.
Okay. Yeah.
So I got my real estate license, was able to get in contact with a trans-world business broker in Los Angeles who had just opened her office. So I was the first agent that she signed on. And she was new to being a business broker as well. So I just jumped in, became a business broker. This was in late 2022. So like November of 2022. And just went all in. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I have a 5-year plan. I want to, sell businesses. I want to become a broker myself. I want to get my broker's license. And that was kind of my vision.
And Matt, what does a business broker who's successful make every year?
That's a great question. I think it's a wide range. I mean, it depends on your deal size. So if you're selling, and The percent commission is around 10 to 12%.
Yep.
For a business broker, and then obviously you got to split that with your broker. I would have to split that with my broker, so I'm getting about 6% on a deal. So if you sell a couple of $1 million listings, that's great income right there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did understand, and I knew going into it that everyone told me you're not going to do a deal in your first year. It takes too long. Yep. to complete a deal. It takes about 12 months just to close a deal. Exactly. So in your first year, you're just trying to get listings. You're just trying to get inventory.
Well, and there, unlike being in the real estate business, so many of the listings in the business brokerage world, so many of the listings that everyone listening sees on Biz Buy Sell will never sell. I mean, right. They, 75% of those or more will just never sell. They're priced incorrectly, or most commonly of all, they're frankly just unsaleable businesses. They're not appealing businesses. Yep. And even if they were, they're also low revenue, low sale price businesses. So while on Acquiring Minds, we talk about $1 million business, which might have 3 or 350 SDE, being a really small business. In fact, easily not even half of businesses on Biz Buy Sell are selling at $1 million. They're selling for six figures. You'll see plenty of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 businesses. The little restaurants and the thises and that's really, really small stuff. And that's so. Anyway, so it seems like a really hard way to make a living.
Yeah. Again, I think I went into it a little bit of being naive and kind of over optimistic. But I just believe that if I go 110% in, that something will happen.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to suggest you were making a bad decision. I'm just putting myself in the shoes of, and it certainly also seems like one of those where 80-20, where, we've heard about this from countless guests, and I've observed it in just looking at listings in my own geographies, where 20% of the brokers are doing 80% of the listing. So if you become one of the main guys in your geography, one of the main brokers in your geography, they probably are getting higher quality listings, more of them, and are probably doing having a decent living. But 80% of brokers are not. You got to break into the elite 20%. And if you don't, it's going to be a long slog.
Right. Yeah. And I was prepared for that mentally of it's going to be a long road to get to where I want to be. Mm-hmm. So my plan was to sell at least 4 or 5 businesses within 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then get my broker's license, and then eventually have my own territory, have my own broker's office where I have agents working underneath me, and then look to start acquiring my own businesses, because I have obviously a first look at the business. I have an inside look. So purchasing a business was on my mind, but it wasn't in the near future. It was more far out. I was more like, I'm going to be a business broker. That was going to be my identity.
As it turned out, it happened sooner than you thought. Carry on. So you get in there, and how does year 1 or 2 go for you as a green business broker?
Yeah. So year 1, I got some good listings. I had about 8 listings. I would say maybe only 2 or 3 of them were actually like good businesses that were sellable. The rest of them were kind of just, I'm just basically padding my stats. I'm padding my inventory. And I kind of knew that I was, I just wanted to have the listing so I can get experience working with buyers, working with sellers, understanding how this process works. But I was waking up at, 4 a.m. every morning, dropping off drop letters at businesses. I probably drove to every part of LA County that I could go to where there's businesses and dropped off letters. Wow. I was dedicated, I was doing everything I could to make something happen. And then I'm dealing with, I'm getting some buyers, but nothing's happening. Buyers are falling out, they're rescinding their offers, or they're not signing the LOIs, or they're not interested. And it just keeps happening. And then fast forward to finding this termite inspection business, amazing listing. I got it over email, or I got in touch with the seller over email. He reached out to me. I had a conversation with him, said, hey, you might as well put your business on the market now. You never know what can happen in a year. You could have a health issue, something can happen, and then you're trying to get rid of your business in an emergency situation, which you don't want. You want to sell it when things are going well. The business is profitable. It looks great on paper. That's the time to sell. And so he agreed. And so I took his listing, and because it's such a profitable business, I think his profit is close. It's about 450 to 500,000 in SDE, and he's been doing that for the last 3 years. And I was like, wow, this is gonna be a home run. I'm gonna sell this in a month. Like this checks all the boxes of what I think a buyer is looking for. And so I put on the market.
Tell us more about the business. I mean, SDE looks nice.
The
what
SDE is
did
great.
he want to sell it for? Was he willing to part with it for a reasonable valuation?
Yeah, I mean, I valued it at 1.3 million, and he agreed with that. He was totally fine with listing it for that price. I think because he knew it was he probably knew more than me that it was going to be hard to find a buyer, because it's got to be a specific person that wants to buy this type of business. And me being green, I'm just like looking at the numbers. This is a great business, and so many people are going to want to buy this.
In fact, you do get a lot of interest.
I do. Yes.
So tell us about the interest that you get, but why none of that materializes into any real buyers.
Yeah. So almost immediately from listing it, I'm getting private equity groups contacting me. I'm getting, some of the larger pest control companies from like the Midwest contacting me, wanting to learn more about it. So I was having meetings almost every day with potential buyers. It was kind of overwhelming how much interest I was getting. So I was feeling good. I was like, this is going to happen. And as I was having conversations and they're asking questions about the business, about the seller, about the, what type of pest control it is, it's a termite inspection business. So it's not necessarily recurring revenue. It's not like branch. So there's 3 branches of pest control. There's branch 1, which is dealing with like fumigation and chemicals. There's branch 2, which is household pests. So dealing with like rodents and bugs and things like that. That's where your recurring revenue is. We're branch 3. So we're dealing with wood destroying organisms. So like termites.
Wood destroying organisms.
Yeah. So we're dealing with the structure of the house. So we're not going back to the same house on a regular basis. We treat it once and we move on to the next house.
Right.
So our business comes from real estate agents who are doing a home transaction. And typically it's the buyer's agent who hires us to come do the inspection, and it's happening during escrow. And so
anybody who's bought a home, or almost anybody who's bought a home, will recall that the termite inspection is one of the line items that you're paying for before you sign on the dotted line.
Exactly. It's not required in California, but everyone does it because in Southern California, I would say majority of homes have some form of termite issues. So you'd be wise to get a termite inspection. You pretty much need to in this area, which is great for this business. I mean, it's never going away.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. And I'm sure other buyers loved about it, but there's no recurring revenue. So all the private equity groups, they left almost immediately. As soon as they heard there's no recurring revenue, they're not interested.
And so when they pick up the phone and call you, what they're looking for is what did you call it? Branch 2?
branch two, pest control, just like household pests.
Yeah.
You have a schedule.
Mosquito Joe's franchise, for example,
exactly.
Which we've had on the pod. Yeah.
You're servicing the same houses every week or every month. You have your route, and you just get your techs to follow that route.
Yeah.
And
you come in and you spray and go to the next house. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not us. That's not this business. And then I started talking to individual buyers. Some of them already have pest control businesses. And then some are, I'd say majority of them were from the tech world. There are a lot of tech buyers, they made their money in tech, and now they're like, hey, I want to own a home service based business that is recession proof, that is highly profitable. So this business checked all those boxes on paper, but then they start learning, okay, they almost need to become a termite inspector for this to make sense. They need to step into the shoes of the seller and learn the business like he does. They can't just sit back and be an absentee owner in this type of business. It would be too much.
Why not? Tell us about the way this business operates, that it's not something that buy it, maybe operate it for a while, but then you could put in an operator.
Yeah. So I think as an owner of this, you really need to understand the business, and you need to understand everything that a termite inspector does. And then also you have to have those relationships with the real estate agents. So for a lot of the buyers, they saw the risk in that. They said, okay, if the seller leaves, all of those relationships go away.
Yep.
With the real estate agent. And this new guy comes in who doesn't really know what he's doing. Real estate agents aren't going to trust that. They're going to be like, hey, this guy, doesn't know how to properly do an inspection or how to recommend treatment or wood repair. They're just going to call someone else. There's no reason for them to stay with any termite company. They can just move on to the next one. So there's risk in that.
Sure.
And I think the risk was too high for most buyers.
Well, they're right to push on that. Those are the very things that I would be pushing on too. And you're going to tell us how you mitigated those risks. But the other thing that jumps out at me, Matt, is that if it's so tied to home sales, home transactions, obviously it ebbs and flows with the residential real estate market, which is notoriously cyclical, and we happen to be in a terrible market as we speak.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it is cyclical, and there are ebbs and flows. But obviously we had his tax returns going back 5 years, and even in this year, it's obviously down. But I think just being in Los Angeles, it's always going to be a market that's moving. And so
a critical mass of homes are transacting every year.
So we haven't really slowed down that much. We've slowed down a bit. I'd say we're about maybe 15% down from last year. Last year was their highest ever in the company's history. So, and there's a few reasons for that, but that are more related to being in Los Angeles specifically. But if we're only being 15% down from their best year ever is not too bad for a down market. And so
exactly. That's great.
Yeah.
How many employees do the business have?
So they have one office manager, and then they had 3 inspectors. So they had the seller and then 2 other inspectors. Unfortunately, one of those inspectors passed away last March. So as I was trying to sell this, I think just before I tried to sell this business or became their business broker, he had passed away. So that I thought that would hurt the business because that's an inspector that's not there anymore to handle the business. But they ended up maintaining the work.
Really?
The seller took on more jobs, and they made it happen. So that was really interesting that they could
because that would be the classic case where I would say, okay, so there's 3 technicians here. If one disappears for whatever reason, passes away, sadly in this case, or quits, then, out walks 33% of your revenue.
Right.
But it sounds like the 2 remaining guys, and namely the owner, scrambled to just keep fulfilling orders.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that's also clearly not sustainable. It's basically not each of those guys, the arithmetic would be that they're basically doing 50% more work for the same pay.
Right.
So that's hard. Although, excuse me, actually not the seller. He's got one less person to pay, so he's making more. He's making more.
And it's commission based. So the other inspector was actually making more money because he gets a commission split of the jobs that he does.
Okay.
Which is great. I want the inspectors that work here to make the money that they bring in. I want them to make as much as they want to make.
And you use the word commission because the inspectors are charged with doing some sales themselves. They're encouraged to close business themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's their responsibility to sell their recommendation on the job. So if the house requires fumigation or local treatment or subterranean treatment, they need to be able to communicate that to the customer in a knowledgeable way so that the customer feels comfortable accepting us doing that work.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like you're upselling. It's more of, hey, this is what my findings were. These are my recommendations, and here's why you need to do these recommendations.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's basically on the inspector to get that job and close the deal.
Let's put a pin in that because we're getting ahead of ourselves. So the PE firms are not looking for this type of pest control business. The individual buyers aren't either, maybe for different reasons. And so how does your thinking about this business evolve, and how does your relationship to it evolve?
Yeah, so I was doing meetings. I probably did over 100 meetings, and then probably about 30 in-person meetings with the seller and buyers. So I'd bring the buyers to the seller's house, and we'd have a meeting, and they get to meet. And so through that process, I got to know the seller really well. I was spending a lot of time with him and his wife and at his house. And so I just, got to see him and get to know him on a personal level and see how he operates his business from the inside out. And I just really connected with how he did things. And I began to see how genuine of a person he is. Mm-hmm. And that kind of allowed me to start thinking in a different way of all these people are walking away from this deal. They're not interested. Why is this not selling? And then now I'm thinking, okay, what if I was the buyer? What if I could step in and work with the seller? Mm-hmm. And so I started asking myself those questions to see where it goes.
And how did he respond?
He was kind of confused at first. He's like, "You want to buy this business? Are you sure?" And he kind of laughed at me a bit. And I just said, "Hey, let me go on a ride with you. Let me do a ride along with you one day. I just want to see what you do on a daily basis. I want to see if I can do the work that you do, if it's even possible." And so, yeah, I went along with him. And funny enough, the first house he ever takes me to is in the sub area. It's probably the most difficult sub area he's ever gone on in 30 years. There's like 7 different compartments that you have to crawl into and crawl out of.
Well, and Matt, just for some context. So basically what he does, what a termite inspector does, is get on their backs or their hands and knees to enter below, what do we call it?
Correct.
The sub area of the house.
Yeah.
The sub area.
So we have to go underneath the house, crawl on the whole perimeter of the underneath the house to check for termites and water damage.
And so you're crawling, you're on your back or on your belly in the dark I mean, just the farthest reaches under the house.
Yes.
So this is hard work to put it obviously. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So you say, so that's why, so now it's much more, maybe it's much more clear why he himself recognized that this might be a hard business to sell. It's going to take a certain person to do this work.
Right.
So you recognize that. And so you go along on a ride along to see if you can hang.
Correct. Yeah. I was like, let me just see before you get any further, can I just crawl underneath a house? Or can I go into an attic and not, get claustrophobic or freak out if I see a rat or a spider or something? And I went under and yeah, it was uncomfortable at first, but then once you're crawling and you start moving, like I just didn't think about it anymore. I was just following him, listening to what he's telling me. And I just was totally fine. And I was like, I got out and he told me, he's like, hey, that was probably the most difficult crawl I've done. And you survived it. And I was like, that wasn't that bad. I thought it would be a lot worse.
And Matt, describe the crawl again. You said 7 something. What
7 compartments. So like underneath that, typically when you're underneath a house, you can crawl anywhere. It's just one open space.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this was like 7 like dug in the dirt, like small compartments that you have to crawl in and out of, which is very unusual. I have not seen, another house like that.
And so the kind of thing that you're testing for, well, first of all, you're testing, I mean, it's dirty work. I mean, so there's that. It's hard work, physically hard work. Yep. And then there's basically the claustrophobia factor, I assume, and the creepy crawlies fear factor. Have I forgotten anything? Because there are a lot of things about this work. Any of those might turn somebody away.
Probably the thing I like least about it is how dirty you get. Like you're just covered in dirt and grime and spider webs. Yeah, I don't like that part. That's not fun.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this is why he gets to earn $500,000 a year, and now you do. Okay. Right. So, all right. So you come out, you emerge from this first crawl, as you put it, and you say, "There's something here. I can do this."
Yeah, the way I was looking at it, I was like, I'm thinking in my head, okay, I'm okay with doing work that other people don't want to do. This doesn't bother me. And then I'm thinking, okay, this is an opportunity to do something big or bigger than what I've done before. And the best thing about it is I get along really well with the seller. This is someone that I trust. This is someone that I look at as genuine. That's not trying to, he's not greedy. He's not just trying to get over on people. Like he's very honest. He's very forward and he's not trying to hide anything, which I really admired. So I was like, okay, this is a perfect setup for me. This is someone who wants to mentor someone. He's looking to mentor someone. His kids don't want the business. They went off and they're doctors and financial advisors. They went into the professional world. They didn't want to do, dad's dirty work. But I'm looking at it like, hey, this is an opportunity to build something. I look at it as like, hey, I can turn this into a much bigger business. I can, under his tutelage, I can bring that mindset to it.
Well, you just in a word captured so much of kind of what the buying boring businesses movement is all about is having the vision that these businesses, while the actual work of the technician is hard, is difficult, it's a path to wealth that's been overlooked for a generation or two. And if you can become the owner and not a technician, then you also don't have to do that work. We're not oversimplifying, of course. There's still a lot to figure out, but that path, that trajectory, and seeing these businesses from the perspective of ownership as opposed to practitioner of the trade, is what this movement is about. And you're there. You are kind of, it's crystallizing for you.
Right. Yeah. 100%. It became very clear, which I had been looking for, since exiting the wine industry. It's like I'm just walking in a cloud of fog, like not really knowing where to go, and then all of a sudden I find this clarity and a path to go down, and that was really motivating. Once I realized, okay, I can do this work, I see a path forward, and then obviously now the hard work starts. Of like trying to figure out, how do I make this deal happen?
Yeah, I love it, Matt. That's really great. And so the seller, after kind of his initial reaction to your saying, well, how about I maybe look at buying this business? And he's a little skeptical, but he's warmed to you quickly, and in fact sees in you an heir apparent, a mentee, just the type of person, in fact, that he would have liked to sell to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say also that his wife kind of pushed him along too. Like I think she saw in me the potential, and she really pushed for this to happen as well. She was very much on board, which I think helped a lot.
Well, I mean, from their perspective, from both husband and wife's perspective, they've now seen the market reaction to this business. It's been out there for sale. They've seen 100 buyers come through. They've talked to 30 in person, and found what it sounds like the seller predicted, which is that it was going to be a hard business to sell. So their hunch that it was going to be a hard business to sell has in fact come true. This is going to be hard for them to sell. So they're probably much more open to any willing buyer than they were at the beginning of the process. Right. And the willing buyer turns out to be the very person that's seen on the inside of this business. I mean, they trusted you. They now had got, in the same way that you trusted him and started to build a respect for him and how he operated. I assume that was reciprocated, and they liked what they saw in you over those months. So it starts to feel like an alignment of the stars. And in fact, wow, if Matt really wants this business, we better grab him, because it's going to be hard to find another buyer, and a buyer that we like.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
So how do you then envision buying it? Let's talk deal terms, structure.
Absolutely. So at first, my first thought is, and I'm working with my brother-in-law, Scott, because he has experience doing deals, and I'm working with him. And my first thought is to do like 10% down and 90% seller financing. Like let me just present this to him and see what happens. Because in my head, I'm thinking, this is going to be the best way to do it. That'll give him incentive to stay around for a couple of years, and I need him to stay around. So if I do seller financing, I can pay him off, over time, and we can make this happen. And he was not for that. He just said, no, if we're going to do seller financing, I need 50% down. Because I think he was kind of like, okay, if this new guy comes in and he doesn't work out, I'm not going to get paid. If I come in and ruin the business, he wants some insurance, he wants some cash up front, and which I totally understood. I was like, totally understand. I just thought I would try it, see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, a 90% seller finance deal is, let's call it effectively, it's a fully 100% seller. It's close to 100 fully seller finance. And while some of the business buying gurus will tell you such a thing is possible, they are unicorn deals, precisely because how few sellers are actually going to want to take that deal. So, right. But hey, you tried.
I tried. So I went back to the drawing board, and my brother-in-law connected me with a loan broker, Francis Miller with multi-funding. And he's the one who helped me structure the deal. And he was awesome. I mean, he was fantastic with me along the whole process. So basically what we came up with is doing a partial buyout with an SBA loan. And so it's kind of a new deal structure that SBA loans are doing, where the buyer buys at least 80% of the business. Seller has to retain at least 20%, and they have to stay around for 2 years. So they have to remain in as an officer of the business for 2 years. And I was like, that sounds awesome to me. That sounds like a great deal. And I, the buyer, only have to put 5% down. Mm-hmm. So even better. I'm like, okay, I can make that happen. That, this is a win-win for everyone.
And Matt, let me just stop you on that. So right. There were rule changes just a year ago, 2023. Regular listeners will have heard this talked about. And rule changes at the SBA, the biggest probably among them, that you can now do these partial buyouts where the seller retains ownership in the business. And it can actually really facilitate transactions where there's licensure requirements, which I think is the case here. You'll let us know. But your thing about the 20%, I don't think I knew that part. So in a partial ownership SBA transaction, the seller has to retain 20, but you said the buyer has to buy. Go ahead. 20 or less. It's 20 or less.
Yes, 20 or less. 20 or less. So we did 15. We did 15. Gotcha. So I buy 85. The seller retained 15.
And you only had to put 5% down.
Exactly. Correct. Yeah.
You were going to say? Sorry.
I was just going to say, it just has to be under 20 or under for what they retain.
Fantastic. And sorry, did you say, just rewinding a second, did you say why you didn't end up doing the 50-50, where the 50% seller finance? Because that would require you to bring 50% cash, which you didn't have. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Correct.
Right. Okay. So we've arrived at an SBA, frankly, pretty typical SBA transaction for my guests. Yep. Great. And what about now the licensure here? Licensing.
Yeah. So you don't need a license in order to own a pest control business in California. You just need someone who holds an operator's license working within your business, which the seller holds that license. He has an operator's license. So I can operate the business under his license until I get my own operator's license, which takes about 4 years to obtain.
Which is, that's a lot of time.
Exactly. Yeah. And so obviously most people can't just step into this and, become an operator of a pest control business. You need a lot of experience to do that.
Yeah. And that 4 years so is that 4 years of like classes, courses, formal education, or is it some formal education and then years in the field that you're just have accumulated and can point to?
Yeah, it's more so in the field, and then you have to get education credits, and then you have to take a test. So I believe I can get my operator's license sooner than 4 years, based on how many hours I put in as a field rep. So it is possible to do it sooner than that. It's just you have to do it a lot, which I am. So I'm hoping to do it sooner than that.
But frankly, that's a lot more time than I guess. It suggests that there's a lot of skill in this trade, that there's a lot to learn. Is that true? I think most of us who know nothing about it would think, you look for some evidence of termites on the wood under the house, and then when you see them, it doesn't seem as technical as whatever, plumbing, let's say. But I'm naive, so tell me what it's like.
If you have a construction background, you'll have no problem. So it's very much related to the construction of the house. I think what gets really technical is how termite damage relates to water damage, which relates to the structure of the house. So you kind of have to put all those things together. So we're not only looking for termites, we're looking for leaks, water damage, and then I need to be able to identify where that leak is coming from, and then I need to be able to recommend how to fix that problem.
Yes.
And so that takes years of experience to know that. It's not something you can read in the book and understand. It's just being on the field and
totally
being exposed to it.
Right. So if you've got what happens with termite damage is leakage and water gets around, which leads to all sorts of other problems. And then I guess if the termite damage is bad enough in particular places, it can present a structural problem. Like it can actually start to be a load bearing issue.
It can, yeah, absolutely. That issue can come up. I don't see it too much. We usually catch the termite issues before that happens, and we, do the treatment so that it doesn't get to that point. But if we did find that the structural integrity was compromised, we would bring in a GC or someone else to fix that problem. It wouldn't be us, but we need to be able to recommend that problem needs to be fixed.
So this brings us back to your commission-based structure, the commission-based structure of the business, where you are paid a flat fee for the inspection. And then when and if you find repairs that need to occur, you didn't want to use the word upsell, but you offer your services to make those repairs. And so I guess there's a band of repairs that you can handle. If they become, like you just said, if there's structural integrity issues, you would hand that off to a GC. What does it look like, the repair work that you guys do? Like, give us an example or two of what that would look like in size and scope and revenue sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the majority of the repair work that we handle ourselves is like rafter tails or fascia boards or posts on a railing, just simple wood pieces that, we can replace, in a day. We can handle that type of wood repair. Yeah, no problem.
So you cut out the offending piece of wood and replace it with a fresh piece of wood is
correct.
Is what it often looks like.
Exactly.
Okay, Matt. Well, I want to start wrapping us up here. What this story could be potentially is an entrepreneur buying a very small technician-based business, becoming that technician himself. And then I assume the goal here is to grow it to not be just, buying a job, but have a termite inspection empire across Southern California. In your fantasies, I imagine those are they. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so if that's all right, how do you envision that playing out? How are you going to do that?
Yeah, that's definitely all true. I mean, my vision is to grow the business and bring expansion into the game plan.
Yep.
So the way I envision it is slowly but surely. So right now I'm actually in the middle of hiring another inspector to bring onto the team. And then I want to bring on at least another 2 inspectors next year, along with another office person, to handle all of the workload that's going to be coming in. And then I would say in the next 5 years, I would like to expand territory. So opening another branch in another county. So expanding into Orange County. So that's kind of my longer term goal, is to just expand territories, branch out. Because we with termites, you want to stay close to the coast. That's where most of the, wherever there's water, there's going to be termite issues. So we want to be in a coastal area. So Orange County would be an amazing territory for us down the road.
And help me understand the particular hurdle or challenge of, you've got your seller who's a part owner in the business, 15%. He also holds the operator's license. And he's there for 2 years or indefinitely?
2 years.
And
2
that
years.
that was part of your agreement with him. That was written
Yep.
into the purchase agreement.
Correct.
And so what happens at 2 years? He no longer has a job, or he also, you buy his equity, you buy him fully out at that point. What happens at 2 years?
In 2 years, he's going to retire. So he's 63 now. So it just, the timing worked perfectly for him to retire. And so what happens is, I'll buy out the rest of his shares at that point, and then I'll be on my own. And so within those 2 years, it's really on me to build the team and get as many inspectors training underneath him as I can while he's here. So that's the hurdle. I need people to work under him and be trained by him, because I call him Yoda. He's the Yoda of termite inspection, and I need to find a bunch of more Luke Skywalkers.
Yeah.
Who are ready and willing to learn and be under his tutelage.
And just going back to the license piece, the operator's license. So wait, I thought it took basically 4 years for you to get it. You said you hoped that to be on a bit of an accelerated timeline, but not all the way down to 2 years. So what happens at 2 years when he retires?
If I can't get my operator's license at that time, I can still use his operator's license underneath the business. So in California, the operator, whoever holds the license, they only need to be in the office like once every 3 months. So they don't need to be active in the business. It's like I can kind of operate under his license.
Oh.
And the other inspector actually holds an operator's license as well that's currently working for me. So I could use his license. Okay. So there's solutions to the problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, so then the question is, I kind of had the impression, Matt, that you were going to be doing the work of a technician, of a termite inspector under your seller, because you needed to get your operator's license. But if you don't, because the seller has it and he can have the license, you can continue to operate under his license even after he retires, and you've got a backup with your other technician.
Yep.
Why are you choosing to get in the business as opposed to just spend your time learning as kind of the sweet spot, learning, enough about the business, but not actually getting under houses, and instead spending time on hiring as many inspectors as you can, for example?
Right. I think for me and the seller, it mitigates the risk if I can be an inspector. Worst case scenario, if one of the inspectors goes away, I need to be able to step in at any time and be able to fill that role. So I think it just mitigates risk in the long term. And then it's going to help me to be able to train. Once the seller is gone, I need to be able to train new inspectors and be able to continue the work that we do, because he's highly specialized. I mean, the knowledge that he has is incredible. I mean, it's 30 years worth of knowledge, and it just takes time to become an inspector on that level. It's not something where you can just jump in and in a couple months you understand it. It's like it takes a long time to be highly skilled in this position. So I want to be highly skilled while he's still here, learn under him. And then in 3, 4, 5 years, be able to take a step back and focus on growth and not be a technician on a day-to-day basis. But if there's an emergency situation or I need to step in, I need to be able to be an inspector for a day or to handle a situation. Yeah.
Makes sense. And certainly to the extent that you're educated and trained and experienced in the field, the better you'll be able to basically understand every other facet of the business, from hiring to estimating to, to acquiring competitors, maybe. By the way, why don't you mention here what you mentioned to me on the pre-call, that this is a classic blue collar fragmented boomer business where lots of your
Right.
competitors are on their way out to their own retirement.
Yeah, which is, it's not something that I knew going into it, but being in the business now and learning and experiencing the industry, a lot of competing inspectors, like they're just retiring. You know, there's sole proprietors, and you know, they're just retiring or moving, or you know, just stopping business. And obviously that creates opportunity for me to continue this business and step in and bring it, the next generation, into it. So it's fascinating that, you know, there's still so much work to do. Los Angeles is a huge market, and the housing market's not going to, you know, die off anytime soon. So it's like there's just so much work to be done and so much opportunity that, you know, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It keeps me motivated every day.
Yeah.
That, you know, how much work that needs to be done.
Well, despite the fact that we talked about how 100% seller financing deals are nearly impossible to find, one context where you do hear about them happening, and they're not terribly uncommon, is a situation like this where you are now in the business and there's a retiring owner who's a pretty small shop, maybe just, you know, a guy or two or three in his truck. And somebody like that who might not have any other buyers, and you're his competitor, he may, in fact, and you now you're in the business, so you can demonstrate to him that you know what you're doing. You've successfully run a termite business for a year or two or three. And so his risk of selling to you is mitigated because he sees that you're a competent operator. He may be willing to sell to you for 100% seller financing. And you could, you know, accumulate some more assets.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hope I come across, you know, some operators like that, and who are looking to retire and move on, and I could step in and you know, help with that, and then obviously help grow my business at the same time.
Great, Matt. Well, and let me I just want to distill, because I think that there's the outline here of a very common situation that people might encounter, which is a small blue collar business that's quite technical. And you, as an outsider, a hungry entrepreneur who wants to buy this business, is struggling with, you know, but I don't know how to run this business. And so there are a number of ways to approach that, but just to distill how you're going to do it, you are going to become a technician. You're going to become a termite guy. You are learning at his elbow or at his whatever, the soles of his feet as you crawl under him. And you're probably going to get your operator's license. So you are going to become a true technician. And that'll make you a better operator. That'll make you a better hirer. That'll just, as we just talked about, make you just understand every facet of the business. But in, you know, the 3, 4, 5 year plan is that you step up and out and then really start working on the business, maybe almost exclusively. You'll drop in where you have to if one of your technicians calls in sick. But you'll mostly at that point be an owner and not a technician, but really deeply understand the business at that point, because you will have been a technician for some years. And so I guess so that's one way to do it. I think that's one way to do it. I think that for a lot of people listening, I still do think, Matt, that you are unusual in that you're so willing to do the work. You know, a lot of people are willing to get their hands dirty, but you know, the person out there buying an HVAC business is not actually learning how to be an HVAC technician. You know, so many of my guests who've bought blue collar business, they bring to the team a different value proposition. I can be, you know, I don't know HVAC, I don't know plumbing, I don't know landscaping, but I know how to operate a business. I know how to grow this. I know how to support you. I know how to help you do your job better. But they don't ever even entertain becoming the technicians themselves. And so your path is a little bit different, which is just notable. And I think it's great. And so then zooming out, Matt, is this what you think you'll do indefinitely? Is this from here on out? I mean, of course, who knows what happens in 20 years. But for the moment, is this something where you see doing this as a chapter or something you see for the long run of your career?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's both. I think this could be, something that I can do for a very long time, as long as I can step out and away from the business and be able to just, run it from afar. And I'm sure, with my entrepreneurial spirit that I got from my parents, that I will look to get involved with acquiring other types of businesses or starting other businesses. I'm not looking at this as like, I have to do this for the rest of my life. This is the only thing I'm going to do. I look at this as an opportunity to grow something amazing and give me the opportunity to do other businesses and do other things that interest me on a deep level. So, I'm not emotionally invested in it, in being a termite inspector. I'm more emotionally invested in how can I grow a business? How can I be better as an entrepreneur? And then, go from there.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I'll just, one last observation, which is just that moment, how this opportunity provided you the clarity that was so lacking. And you didn't know which way you were going to turn. I've often said that one of my favorite things about the path of buying a business is that it provides possibility where an entrepreneurial person might otherwise not see any. And you really seized this when it became clear, the opportunity, you really seized it and have gone after it, which is so awesome to see. Any themes we didn't get to, Matt?
I think a good theme is, committing 100%. When I made the decision to go after and buy this business, I mean, it was a long road. We didn't really touch on it, but just the whole process of dealing with the SBA lender and getting the deal done was pretty arduous. But I committed to it and I followed through with it. And there was a lot of times during the deal that I thought it wasn't going to happen. Not because the seller didn't want to sell or I didn't want to buy. It was more of just dealing with the lender and everything that needed to happen, and everything that needed to be put in order for it to happen. It was just, it was a crazy process. But yeah, committing to it and staying on top of what you really want, being diligent about going after what you want and not giving up and not letting hurdles get in the way. That was a big one.
Mm-hmm. And was there a hurdle or two in your SBA getting this deal financed that is a teachable moment? Anything to share there?
Yeah, I think honestly, the biggest hurdle was dealing with insurance. And I think I don't know if this is different state by state, but just being here in California, it was an arduous process. And I wish I had started on dealing with the insurance sooner in the process. I kind of waited on that because I didn't know how difficult it was going to be, but just getting all the insurances transferred over to my name because it was a stock sale. It was a pain. And it was really not fun. And I wish I had, if I had to do it over again, I would have done it differently. I would have been more on top of it.
Okay. All right. And it was a stock sale because of that operating license, I assume.
Yeah, and because we did a partial buyout, so everything remained the same.
Right.
We just transferred the stock over to my name, the 85%.
Well, the audience will have heard when this airs just a couple weeks ago or just a couple episodes ago, another Southern California, LA-based buyer of a blue-collar business, a pool cleaning and service business. Similar situation, actually. Similar, both quite small businesses, although yours is actually a little bit larger, I think, in terms of SDE. And partial buyout, SBA partial buyout deals. stock deals, license needs. So a lot of parallels between you and Christiana Laugen.
Awesome.
By the way, I never got the revenue of the business. We just talked SDE.
Yeah, it's about 1.8 million.
Oh, okay. Matt, if people want to reach out to you, how do you prefer they do that?
Definitely over email. It's a great way to reach me. I'm not too active on social media. So yeah, just Matt at toptermiteco.com. Great way to reach me.
Well, Matt Railla, I congratulate you on finding a path that you are charging after. Seems like there's a lot of opportunity here, and even more so because you are not afraid to do the actual work of the business, which oftentimes we all are. And you're diving underground and doing it. I think that'll just mitigate a lot of the risk and set you up for that much more success. So look forward to hearing how it goes, Matt. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come. Stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.